Well, well, well. I'm surprised. We got a special guest today. I'm surprised we haven't had you on any of our shows before. It's been a while that we've been doing this. We got Officer Tatum, Brandon Tatum. I guess. Is that still your social handle, Officer Tatum?
Yeah, the Officer Tatum. I couldn't change it a long time ago, so I just left it.
Yeah, I mean it could be Safety Tatum, right?
Yeah.
I like that one.
Hard-hitting Safety Tatum. That's what it should be.
Like Ronnie Lott, right? You didn't cut your fucking pinky off or anything, though, right?
Oh, no.
That dude. Do you guys remember Ronnie Lott? Cut his pinky off, the end of his pinky to stay in the season. That's weird. That's weird. Like I like sports, but come on, man, take it easy. So you're originally from Fort Worth. Where do you live now?
I live in Phoenix, Arizona.
Phoenix. You like it out there?
Yeah, I love it out here. I mean, I don't plan on living anywhere else. So I think it's great. Weather is beautiful most of the year, and then you go through hell during the summer, and it's back to being beautiful.
Now, you say most of the year. I've been there during this time of year. It's hot as fuck.
Oh, not now. I mean, well.
I was there last year in March for spring training, watch some games, and it was pretty toasty.
Yeah, it depends on what a person feel is hot. 80 degrees, maybe low 90s is not that hot for a person that live in Arizona.
Yeah, sure.
When you get into the 117s and that's when you feel like, oh man, it's too hot to be outside. Even though people still work. And when I was on a football team in Tucson is a little cooler than Phoenix, but when I was in Tucson, we practiced. Our summer practice was in the summer, 10 a.m. when it was hot as I don't know what. So in Arizona, people get used to it. So when I say beautiful, I'd say beautiful is between 65 and 85 degrees. And that's what it is most of the year. And then it starts to ramp up to the 90s, which is still good for me.
Yeah, I like the 90s.
I like the 90s. And then when they get in the hundreds, it's a little more stressful.
So let's do a bit of background here. You grew up in Fort Worth, and then you played football, right? Tell me about how you got into that.
Well, when I was a lot younger, maybe 8, 9, I wanted to be a basketball player. I wanted to be just like Michael Jordan. I mean, I just knew that's what my path would be. And then when I got older, man, I couldn't dribble with my left. I fouled out of every game. So I realized that I'm probably a football player. So in middle school, I started playing football. And, I hit some guy. I remember our tryouts. They did a little kickoff simulation. I hit a guy, knocked his helmet off in 8th grade. And so from that point on, I had a good reputation on the football field, more so than basketball. So I just pursued football.
And kind of in the footsteps of your uncle, Jack Tatum, who's a kind of a legend at Ohio State, right? I mean, played the same position too. So yeah, you played at Arizona.
Yep, University of Arizona. Coming out of high school, I was an All-American football player, top player in the nation. I had a scholarship just about anywhere, and I ended up picking Arizona because Coach Stoops coached there. He was the former defensive coordinator at University of Oklahoma, and they had a pretty solid program. So I said, you know what, I want to give it a chance. I think he's going to turn the program around in Arizona, and I want to be a part of it. And I went there, man. My career went downhill from probably the second game of the season, my freshman year.
What happened? What do you think happened there?
It was a combination of things. My first year I wasn't expecting to play. I had 2 really talented players in front of me. One was up for the Thorpe Award, Darrell Brooks. He was a safety, and the other was Layman Means. They both were freaking incredible players. And so it wasn't a big deal, but my attitude was bad. I wasn't used to coaching like Coach Stoops did, because my high school coach was pretty, he would yell at us, he would cuss and be crazy sometimes, but he loved us. We knew he cared. He put his neck out there to be a white guy in an all black community coaching at a hood school. And we know he loved and cared about us. He'll fight for us. So him yelling at us wasn't that big of a deal. We knew what it was. But when I got to college, man, it was on another level, man. They'll cuss you out, talk crazy till you get in your face. And me coming from the background I came from, it wasn't, I didn't take lightly to it, man. I wanted to fight him. And, I almost got in a fight with one of the coaches at our second game of the year. We played University of Purdue. And I just got in the doghouse after that, man. The coaches didn't think I was coachable, which they were correct at the beginning. And then it never recovered from there.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works. I mean, I don't know how high school programs these days or back then even really worked, but it does seem like the best college coaches have a bit of an edge to them. And then that doesn't really translate into the NFL very well. Like Nick Saban didn't do very well in the NFL. Obviously, we just saw Urban Meyer have some issues trying to. It's different when you're talking to a grown man, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's different when you're recruiting, and it's a balance. You know, like there's a balance between disrespecting somebody and holding them accountable. Like our strength and conditioning coach, he had the balance. He never cursed you out. He didn't even curse, but he would rip you a new one. He would be on you, but we knew he loved us. Stoops was just crazy. He was just a maniac. That's what he is. He would just cuss out the play. He would cuss out coaches. He would cuss out people in front of their wives.
Yeah.
That dude was off the hinge.
Which Stoops is this?
Mike Stoops.
Okay.
So where's Mike Stoops at right now? Okay, that should tell you that he was a nut job. But Bob Stoops seemed like he had a good balance. He's a legend at Oklahoma. Coach Mark Stoops, he was a little more balanced and nuanced. He's the coach at Kentucky, doing very well at Kentucky. By all means, I think they probably had good intentions, but Coach Mike he was off the chain, man. I mean, he was on the sideline like he was spazzing out, and people would laugh at him. It was a whole thing. He would spaz out on the sideline. That's not conducive for being a head coach. A position coach, yeah, you can rah get your defense going, but when you're a head coach, you have to have a nuanced balance.
Yeah, you got to set the tone for everybody, right? Like if you've got super aggressive position coaches and then the head coach is also aggressive, that's not really going to work out, right? It's just there's got to be, and this is something that we'll get into during the show today, but there's got to be even on the football field, there's the masculine and feminine energy. There's the tough guy leadership shit, and there's the fucking empathy shit, right? That's necessary for any, even down to the lowest possible level, which is a family unit, all the way up to a country or world. That dynamic exists in some form or another. And when people start messing around with that dynamic, things start to get weird, which is kind of what we're seeing now, to be honest. Things are getting a little out of control here.
Yeah, out of control.
So once you were done with football, you became a police officer in Tucson. What led you to choose that? I know your dad was a firefighter, but what led you to choose that?
Yeah, so my dad was a firefighter. He was a firefighter our whole life. I think he was a firefighter since he was 19 years old. He just retired, 5 years ago.
Oh wow.
But I mean, I don't even think he retired 5 years ago. I think it may be 3 years ago. So that didn't influence me to be a cop, because police officers and firefighters are two different things.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I got arrested when I was 8. And that was my first exposure to police. And it was pretty traumatic, but for me, it wasn't that traumatic because I grew up in an environment where, watching people fight and do stuff like that wasn't shocking to me. But I didn't have a good perception of police. And growing up in a black neighborhood, you're taught that they're racist white people trying to hurt you, even though my dad wouldn't teach me that. But your peers and the environment that you're in is conducive for making you not like the police or having a negative perception, because you don't know any police officers. And in 2008, when I was in college and I got saved, that's when things changed for me. Like I was more open. I said, you know what, I'm willing to give everybody a fair shake, treat everybody the way I want to be treated. And then if they go off the deep end, then I know who they are.
Right.
So I never really wanted to be a cop. And I was in the NFL draft in 2010. Oakland Raiders were going to draft me, even though I didn't even play in college much. I was just such a talented athlete. They passed on me on draft day in front of my family, and I had a whole draft party. And I tried that again the next year. NFL teams really wasn't feeling me. Semi-pro team offered me to come to mini camp. It was like the Omaha Nighthawks. It was the semi-pro team. They had the Vegas Lobos, and it was a whole league. They paid good. But they offered me, and at the time, my son was small. I don't think he wasn't born yet, or he was about to be born. I mean, he was born a little baby, or he's about to be born right around this time. And I was like, I need to get a job, man. I can't keep chasing football. And I'm not going to take all the credit for that. I had a guy who mentored me right towards the end of my football career, who was very successful financially, very great guy. And he told me, hey, put an X on your calendar for that football stuff. You know, once it's not yielding results, you need to transition to something different. And that's what I did. You know, I applied for the police department. The football program offered me. The police department offered me. And I said, you know, policing is probably a little more of a stable environment for being a father. And but, you know, there was other things that were involved in it, too. Like I did a ride along that blew me away, too. And that really thrusted me into saying, this is what I want to do for a living. I want to be a police officer.
Right. You know, do you think it's, I know there's a big divide between police and fire, especially if you go watch them play in their softball leagues against each other. It gets pretty brutal sometimes. A lot of shit gets talked there.
Yeah.
But there is a common factor, and that's service to the community, right? I mean,
100%.
good leadership will always turn people back towards personal responsibility and serving the community, right? Those are the two hallmarks, in my opinion, of just being a good human being in general. But you've got this mentor that's you said was in the business community. It wasn't a police officer or anything.
Yeah, no, he was. I think he owned a medical supply corporation that supplied medical supplies around the world, and so he was very wealthy. I mean, I don't know what his net worth is, but I remember when I first met him. You know, he has a private jet. You know, his daughter played volleyball with us. With my son's mom, my oldest son's mom, would play volleyball too at the University of Arizona. So that's where we met. But his daughter also played there, and she used to drive a Range Rover and fly on a private jet. So I'm like, he must have had a lot of money. And there was the curtains. If you ever see the curtains in the McHale Center at the University of Arizona, where they play volleyball, basketball, where they have all the stuff at, and there's curtains that come down for the women's sports because, you know, they ain't filling out the arena.
Right. Yeah,
but there needs to be a sound barrier. So these big curtains come down in the stadium and close the stadium off. They're soundproof, and they make it feel intimate for the teams that doesn't fill it up. And he bought those for the university as a gift. So in my mind, I said, okay, he must be making a lot of money. And he did tell me at one point, he said, you know, we were talking about football. He said, look, man, you know, to be honest, like football players, they make a lot of money. A lot of them are rich, but they're not wealthy. Right. Yeah. Said unless you are like Tom Brady or somebody, you ain't really making millions of dollars a year. And he was just telling me, he said, and what I do, I make more than they do every year for the rest of my life. Like they make a little money for a short period of time. 80% of them go bankrupt. So don't put all of your energy into this, because there is more to life. And there's more ways to be incredibly successful than just to play sports. So,
yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of athletes are starting to learn that now. Equity is a lot more valuable than cash,
right?
Especially if you get in early. You know what I mean? I mean, there's been quite a few. Like Kevin Durant owns a lot of stuff in Silicon Valley. A number of these guys would just, like Tom Brady's one of them with TB12, and now this NFT thing he's got going. He's making more money than he'll have ever made in football in a very short amount of time, actually. So it's what year did you become a police officer? 2008, 9?
11.
11. Okay.
So 10 when I was in the draft, and then a year later,
that's right,
I joined the academy in 2011.
Okay. So you're a cop in 2011. I assume you're just on patrol for the first couple of years. Like you were a city police?
Yeah, I was a municipal police officer. So straight out the academy. I was a patrol officer working midnight shift. And I think 2 or 3 years into my career, I joined the SWAT team. I can't remember when I joined the SWAT team. I think it was maybe it was 5 years in my career.
And how was it? How was it being a cop in Tucson? I'm not really familiar with Tucson.
It was out of control. It was crazy, man. And people may not be familiar with Tucson because it's a little smaller, but it's ghetto, it's a mud, man. And it's a diverse kind of ghetto. Yeah. We have a community of just native people. They don't even call the police. If stuff happened, they deal with it in their own community. It's like the hoods of LA, but it's like a little native community. And then we have, you know, pockets of the black community, and then we have the big portion of the white community that's out of control. The trailer parks.
Yeah, there's a lot of meth heads out there. Yeah, like
meth heads on the west, because I worked the west side. So south side was Hispanic and black, and then you have, you know, the east side had its demographic. It was like older people on the east side, so it wasn't a lot of drama. Yeah. But west side, we had it all, man. We had the college was in in our district too. So we had all these drunk college kids getting drunk and drinking and driving and raping and doing all this stuff. And then you have the meth heads, you know, the trailer parks, you know, you have a little bit of Hispanic gang, and we had the village. We call it the village. We had the village in our district. So the West District was diverse, and it was crazy, man. I'm talking, I mean, ODs began to be a thing when I was a cop. Like if people were OD like once a month, twice a month or something, you would probably get an OD call. I mean, people were ODing twice a day towards the end of my career with fentanyl and stuff like that. So Tucson was out of control. Per capita, Tucson is the most dangerous city in the state of Arizona per capita.
Wow. Not really surprised by that, though, to be honest. I mean, given the folks that live there, there are quite a few meth heads running around. So you're on the force a couple years. You join SWAT. And what's that like there? You guys doing? I mean, what's the primary focus of SWAT in that area? You are just based on the type of crime that's happening around there. What are you doing? Drug busts and stuff, or what?
Yeah, most of it was drug bust, no knock warrants. We did all of our raids with no knock. Most of them, I say it. Most of the ones I was on was no knock. So mostly drugs. We would catch people with drugs. These dangerous criminals, fugitives, who are drugs, guns, violence, you know, people wanted for murder and you know, all that nexus of all of that that cocktail of behavior. And we were hitting people everywhere. You know, we hit people at Costco, and we'll show up at houses and, you know, blow the doors off and all that fun stuff, man. Right. It was incredible. I was on the SWAT team for about a year before I left the police department. And I wish I would have spent more time. I wish I had more time on the SWAT team. It was really fun, man. We had the best SWAT team in the country. We had the most call outs in the state, just about. And Phoenix PD is 3 times our size, and we had probably just as many call outs as Phoenix PD. So we were a very busy SWAT team. It was fun, man. We had the coldest dudes in training. We trained with Delta Force sometimes to, you know, and of course they were badder than we were. But, you know, it helped us get our stuff up to speed, though.
How do you feel about those no-knock warrants now? I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, certain instances where you know the person is armed or it's a hostage situation, there's not a whole lot you can do about that. If it's like a person with a violent record, I think it's probably a good idea. But we serve in this country quite a few no-knock warrants that seem like they're more out of convenience than tactical, like some kind of strategic sense. You know what I mean? It's a lot easier. Like you said, snagging some dude at Costco is pretty fucking easy, to be honest, because he's caught unaware. He doesn't have his shit. He doesn't know the landscape better than you and all this other stuff.
Yeah, so no-knock warrants, I'm in favor of no-knock warrants. I think that's the best way to deal with warrants against violent people, you know, and I think one of the misconceptions of no-knock warrants is that people think like the police department just one day say, I want a no-knock warrant, and they just decide to no-knock somebody's house. No, it's a big, thorough process, man. In order for you to get a no-knock warrant, you got to have all kinds of evidence, and you have to present all this evidence to a judge that then grants you the no-knock exception. And a lot of times, even on police departments, if we have any level of confusion, we abandon a no-knock warrant, right? So if we go to a house and we like, you know, somebody went in the house and we have no idea who went in the house. We don't know if there's children there. We abandon the no-knock warrant. If we somehow are going up to do a no-knock and we feel like we've been identified, meaning they have cameras and we kind of hear movement going on, and it's something that makes us feel like that they are more prepared than we expect them to be, we abandon a no-knock warrant because it's not safe for us. But in most cases, they have no idea what's going to happen. They don't know what's going to happen. We have these vehicles that nobody can identify. One of our vehicles looked like a minivan with a it's got like soccer mom or something. It looked like a regular minivan or something that a person would drive and we jump out on you. So, you know, but it's a lot safer than what they make it seem like, man. You know, people, they don't no-knock. I mean, I know that it may have happened out of the hundreds of thousands of no-knock warrants that probably exist. There probably is 1 or 2 that people got the wrong address or they got bad information. But more than likely, if we no-knock in your house, you are a dangerous criminal that our undercovers and people have sold to you. We have people on the inside. Right. All of our no-knocks were because our informants were like, yeah, and we got them on wire, and we hear the interactions, and we have all of this evidence that we present to a judge, and we in Tucson we've never had any problems. We knock everybody in there. Yeah, it's always what it is.
It's
sometimes. Yeah, go ahead.
It's interesting you mentioned the some of the dynamics that happen when to get the warrant and then to serve it as well. We had John Mattingly on recently talking about the Breonna Taylor raid, and he said in retrospect they probably shouldn't have no-knocked it because there's, even though she was part of the investigation, like having her there also instead of just him complicated the issue too much. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's probably true. Like, common sense would tell you that if you had a no-knock warrant and then you all of a sudden discovered that that the family member was there, probably not a good idea to serve that warrant there because for a number of reasons. One, crossfire, but also just the animal instinct to protect your family and shit like that. It elevates the situation a little bit. And it's, easy enough to wait outside the dude's house and crack him in the back of the head when he walks out. In some cases.
In that case with Sergeant Mattingly, I mean, they were in a pickle, man, because they got a no-knock exception for all of these different residences. You know what I'm saying?
Like 5 different places, I think,
Yeah, and because they were trying to figure out where Jamarcus Glover was going to be because he's the dangerous person. And they had to have an exception for every place that if they caught him at one, they need to be able to hit it without knocking. And when they got to Breonna Taylor, they got caught in the middle because they're knocking, but it's not. They're not going to do a no knock.
Yeah.
So they decide to knock, but then it's complicated because now somebody else is there, and when they breach the door like they should have, now they got another person in there that they weren't expecting to have in there. But I know they weren't going to no knock that house, but if they would have done a no knock on her house, she'd still be alive. I
agree with that. Yeah, I think one of the things we started to do in the when I was in the 82nd Airborne was tactical call outs instead of just kicking the door down. It doesn't always work. I would say 70% of the time the shithead stays inside and tries to fight. But that's 30% of gunfights that I don't have to get in now. You know what I mean? Which is that's good for us, obviously safety wise, but it's also good to be able to take people into custody and get more intelligence and stuff like that. I mean, I just don't think I don't pay too much attention to people who've never been in these situations. Armchair quarterbacking, well, you should have done this. Like, dude, you haven't been shot at, so shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? It's interesting to discuss the tactics, though, and it's to me, ultimately, that's what it comes down to. What's the safest way to extract this person out of the community because they're a danger to the community,
and preserve evidence too.
Yeah.
Like I think that in other, maybe in the military, you may have another agenda. Like for us, these people are sitting on a bunch of dope. And they're sitting on a bunch of stolen guns and stuff like that. And if the speed of surprise, we can get them safely without them destroying evidence. Because if, you call out like two scenarios that I point out that people who have never done anything tactical, they have no idea what they're talking about. And I know people in the gun community that they ain't never been a cop or nothing, but they like guns. So they have a comment, and I think it's ridiculous. But like we did 2 warrants, a guy had a bunch of dope, he had a bunch of guns, he had a bunch of evidence that was involved in the murder, and we got him without him destroying any of the evidence. If we would have called and announced him, he would have flushed all the drugs. He would have he would have destroyed some of the evidence because he knew what he was facing. These criminals aren't dumb. Another one was a pedophile. He was the number 2 ranked porn sharer in the country. I think he was either in the country or he was the top in Arizona. And I assisted the FBI SWAT in getting this guy. But you think you're going to call and announce on that guy?
Yeah.
All he's going to do is delete all the porn off his computer and destroy it. And while you out there saying, sir, please, the police, come to the door. He's destroying porn. And so what we did was, I just held containment because, we don't mix with the federal SWAT team.
You're just in the cordon outside the house?
I'm out in the street blocking the road for them. While they do the hits, because we have different protocol. We don't mix SWAT teams. They threw 8 flashbangs in that dude's house.
Shit.
We only do 1 or 2, so they threw 8 of them. And they had a whole team of guys. They breached the door and they had a guy to go straight for the computer and hit the codes on the computer to lock it, so the guy couldn't delete the porn. So, people may think, oh, you should no knock, but it's like, in some cases it's invaluable, or we can't catch anybody. If we had to announce every porn guy, he would just delete it, and you'll get the court, and your kids will never get justice for him having your kids on his computer.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, I'd be fine with you throwing an actual grenade into that room. I really feel like we've got to. There's this battle going on right now where leftists, in my opinion, are trying to groom children.
100%.
And conservatives have been a little asleep at the wheel, to be honest. Like when the confirmation of Ketanji Brown Jackson's going on right now, and it's what we discover from that is that she has been extremely lax on sentencing pedophiles. Now, the suit that's bad news. The worst news is that is common practice. It's not just democratically nominated judges or Republican nominated judges. It's all of these judges are taking it super easy on literal pedophiles. And that's something that I just can't understand. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, it's this push to wussify our system and feel more compassion for the suspects and not the victim. I mean, we just get softer and softer. Like even the death penalty. You know, we just done away with the death penalty in most of these places, and it's like, no, some people need to get put to death. You don't need to sit on taxpayer dollar and spend the rest of your life getting a good meal every day and somewhere to sleep. You need to be put to death.
Yeah.
If that's what it's calling for. But we just I mean, they find ways now to coddle criminals. If you are sharing child pornography, you are interjecting yourself into the industry. You're creating a demand. You're the reason why most of these kids get kidnapped and forced into the sex trafficking. So you are very much responsible. And it's not easy to get child pornography. I guarantee you can't just type it on a computer. Yeah. You have to go to the dark web, and you have to have so much culpability in extracting materials like that you are just as responsible.
Yeah, if it was
if
it was a conspiracy case, or with any criminal case, there's an implicit act, right? There's some actual action that was taken outside of just thinking about doing it that is required. I mean, if you stumble into a room full of dope and the cops show up, you're like, hey, this isn't mine. Yeah. That's not what is happening here. These people are intentionally seeking out this stuff. And what we're hearing from even in the Senate, actually, and in the Congress as well, what we're hearing from these people are, well, it's so easy to get a large number of individual videos or images now that we shouldn't be charging people for each one of them. Like, what the fuck? Why are we making any kind of rule that takes it easier on people who victimize children? You know what I mean? That is like, these people should be executed immediately. As soon as we find out and can establish that they've done this, whatever it is, whether it's watching child pornography, making it, or touching a kid or anything like that, kill them immediately. That's my opinion anyways.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to it, to be honest. You know, hey, you can deal with the Lord on your other side, but in this life, there's consequences for your actions. And that's like saying, hey, cars are faster now, so you can the speed limit, so you should be able to violate the speed limit over 100 miles per hour. No, that don't make sense. The Corvette is faster than, the first Ford that they made. Yeah. These cars are quicker, they're faster, they hug the road, they have technology, all-wheel drive. Since they're better equipped, you can, that's stupid. No, the speed is speed. You're going over the speed limit. You're putting people's lives in danger. They don't, to be honest, they don't coddle that. They don't change that perspective,
because it's a clear and obvious danger to the community. But the question is, why don't you see victimizing children as also a clear and obvious danger to the community? One that, by the way, precipitates itself throughout the generation after. You know what I mean? Like you're creating new violators every time you fucking rape one of these kids.
And these kids are damaged forever. Yeah. I mean, you got some guy grooming them and then they have sex with a little young kid and they're destroyed forever over that. You don't recover. And I almost feel like that these people should go to prison at least until the victim decides when they get out. If the victim feels, hey, I'm healed, I forgive you, you can be out, or whatever the case may be, maybe we can consider that in releasing them. Now, maybe that's not the totality because, you got wonky people out here that they care more about the suspect. So, but if, the person say, nah, I want them in there for the rest of their life, like that should have a tremendous impact. Now, I know they have impact statements in sentencing, but, like Ketanji Brown, they referred her this and she's going well beyond or well lower than what the recommended, not what the height or the highest sentence you could do. The recommended sentence from the prosecutor, she's well below that. Yeah. And when you ask her, she gives some bogus excuse. And it's because, let me tell you this, it's because I don't know if it's a spirit or is it just the evilness of man? I don't know what it is. It's going one step to another, and pedophilia is one of the steps that they're trying to get to or inevitably will get to. It started from Homosexuality was a mental illness in the 70s. It was considered a mental illness. I still think it's a mental illness for your mind to think you want to be with another man. It don't mean you're an evil person. It just means something going on in your mind. Transgenderism is a mental illness. Is gender dysphoria. That's a mental illness. And what happens is they are making acceptance and grooming and moving the goalposts all the way to the right. And now people get to say, I was born this way. And when you do that with no real, in my opinion, no real solid scientific evidence, now pedophiles are saying, I was born this way. And they begin to decriminalize pedophilia. And then before you know it, you got them trying to teach kids about sex and binary and all this stuff in kindergarten. They're grooming these kids. And then before you know it, pedophilia is going to be acceptable. And why can't, these guys, there's a company called Man Boy Love, like an organization, Man Boy Love.
Yeah, NAMBLA, North American Man Boy Love Association. Yeah, that's what's called.
Bro, that exists. That should be a terrorist organization. It ain't no such thing, Man Boy Love. That's pedophilia. Yeah. And somebody came online the other day and they had a phrase for like children, like children attraction or something.
It's MAP, minor attracted person. That's what they're saying.
There you go. Yeah. See, and it starts at a point where we say, oh, that'll never happen. No, now they got terms for it. Now they have legitimate organizations for it. And before you know it, they're going to be interjecting this stuff into the schools. And it's going to start at 16. They're going to say, oh, it's okay if an adult with a 16-year-old, if they consent. And it's going to go to 14, 13, teens. And then it's going to go to prepubescent. And now it may never be accepted as widely as homosexuality, but they're going to start decriminalizing these things. And people are going to be involved in these acts, and they're not going to go to jail over it anymore. They're just going to get counseling and go to a retreat somewhere and get 3 hots in a cot and relax until they back in the streets, abusing other kids. They're going to start blaming the victims. I just see it happening in the next 30 years in our country, maybe even sooner.
Yeah, the transgenderism stuff is weird. I mean, that's certainly a mental disorder. I don't think it's really. I don't think there's any scientific basis to say that homosexuality is. There's plenty of evidence that suggests people are born gay. I mean, if you Deborah So is an author from Canada. Actually, she does a lot of good research on this stuff about the exposure to gametes in the wound and how that affects things. I think calling. I know you're not saying that they're evil people, but that's just not accurate what you just said.
Yeah, and even if it's not, I would acquiesce to what you're saying, but in the self-same regard, it's still something that's going on in your mind mentally. There's no way that you could reproduce, or no way that the human race could evolve if that was a continuation of action, meaning that people cannot reproduce man with man, woman with woman.
Yeah.
Therefore, genetically, that gene should have died off through evolution.
Or maybe it's trying to by doing that, right? Who knows? Right. I mean, it's happened in other species before where selective traits have led to extinction. That's nothing new. And it could just be a natural form of population control as well. Which
it could be, but it's still in my mind, it's still a choice. I mean, you're still choosing to say, because I'm attracted to something, I'm gonna pursue it. I mean, you don't have to. And I'm telling you, these pedophiles will say the same thing. I don't know. I'm born this way. I have this attraction to kids, and I can't control it. And it may be something going on in the mind, just like other things. And just because you feel a certain way, don't mean you have to live like that. Now, if you want to, you live in America, you do whatever you want to do. I couldn't care less. You're not paying my bills. You can be with 5 dudes and you'll be a man if you want to.
As long as everybody's a fucking adult, right? I mean,
as long as you're consenting to it. I mean, it ain't got nothing to do with me. However, people shouldn't make the excuse of, well, I can't control it. I have no choice. This is what I have to be this way. No, that's not true. You know how many beautiful women in the world? Do I have to smash all of them? No, you don't.
Well, I mean,
especially if you're a married man.
Could you choose? Could you choose to be gay?
Could I choose to?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could.
Well, I mean you specifically.
Me specifically?
Yeah.
I think you could. I mean, I'm not attracted to men, so I mean,
right.
But maybe if I was raped, or maybe
I'm saying, like, could you make the lifestyle choice to to have your significant other be another dude?
If I wanted to, I could.
And that would make you what, happy? I mean,
Me?
that would suck, right?
You saying if me being a straight man, could I have that decision to make?
Right. Because you're
Yeah,
saying that gay people,
yeah.
people that are born maybe attracted to the same sex, they could choose to not, act on that. But isn't the same true for you? You could choose to not do what you do, right?
Yeah, 100%. I could choose to not be married to a woman and be single. I could.
Yeah, but no, I'm not talking about being single. I'm talking about, could you choose to be in a long-term relationship with another man? Because that's kind of what you're asking gay people to do. I'm not saying you're asking them, but I'm saying that's kind of the, you know what I mean?
No, I see your point there. I'm only saying for people that say they have no choice, like you have a choice. Like, for instance, if you're married to a woman and she's fat and sloppy and nasty, and you're not attracted to her anymore, what are you going to do?
Well, it's different being attracted to, not being attracted to one specific woman and not being attracted to any woman, right?
Right. I mean, to a certain degree, right? I mean, men aren't attracted to every man that's gay, right? I mean, I would assume.
I don't know. So dudes are fucking scumbags.
Well, I'm saying. I'm saying like men will have sex with just about any woman on the spectrum, generally speaking.
Straight men, like gay men are pretty picky. That's true.
Right. So if a gay man is out there, I mean, he probably don't like every man either. He probably like athletic men or feminine men. You see the guys that are gay, they got the dude that's like a girl.
Yeah.
And so there's a spectrum of attraction, I think, that happen on both sides. And, like it just depends. I can't say too much because I'm not gay. I don't know what they experience. But what I will say is that there are decisions that people have to make. Even individuals who are priests, and they say, hey, I'm gonna be celibate. Do they want to? Is that they can make that decision if they want to. And just like people in homosexual lifestyle, and you live in America, you want to be gay, then be gay. You can do whatever you want to do. But if you want to not be gay, you can pursue not being gay. I know plenty of people that struggle with it, been gay in the past, and they don't live that lifestyle anymore. Now, I'm not saying that's everybody, but I think that if you want to, you could pursue that, and it could happen. Yeah, it's a nuanced conversation because I had this conversation with some of my guys in the cigar lounge, and we just go back and forth, and it got very interesting because, like I said, you live in America, you good. You live in other places, what are you going to do?
Well, I mean, the U.S. government continues to do business with countries that criminalize behavior like that. And when I say criminalize, I mean throw gay people off of fucking rooftops and shit. You know what I mean?
Right, but see, if gay is, what's the difference between gay and transgender? I think that I met a guy. I was on a panel with some trans men, women who turn into men, and it's no way in the world you could tell they were women. These dudes got beards and everything, and just being around them, man, it's like, dang, dude, like you went through all that. You must really believe this. Like this must not be something that is easy for you to choose. You must really believe this, and I think it's weird. I don't care if they do it because it's America, but if you ask me, what my son said, Daddy, I think I'm a girl. Like, am I gonna just? Oh yeah, sure. Let me dress you up real quick. It's like, nah, well, you need to get some help.
Well, I mean, that's different though. I mean, being same-sex attracted and being attracted to children, or thinking that you're trapped in the wrong body. Those are pretty. That's a pretty wide gap between those two things, right? I mean, one is like you don't. That's a literal mental disorder. Your brain doesn't match what your fucking body does.
I feel like the same thing with men too. I mean, your brain must not be matching what your body is because your body should not be attracted to another man. That's the way nature is. Like something has gone wrong in the genes or whatever you want to say. Something has gone wrong. Just like if you're in a body and you like, I'm a girl in real life, something has happened to you. In your mind, and we may agree to disagree, but yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Okay, well, that was fun. Let's talk about. So you're one of the leaders of BLEXIT, which is Black Exit, which I believe was based on the Brexit thing, like getting England out of the EU and shit. So, talk about how that came to be, and what it means. Explain it for the audience as well, because I'm not there. There's quite a large contingent of Black conservatives in America now. More so than probably ever before, especially outspoken ones. And I think it's a very interesting dynamic. So explain how that all came to be.
Yeah, so I'll start from the beginning. In 2017, when I left the police department, I was working for a conservative organization, and I met Candace Owens. She just hit me up on Twitter like, hey, we should collab and do some stuff together. And I'm like, cool. We met each other and then we hit it off, man. We became really good friends. And in 2018, we started BLEXIT together. I mean, it was mostly her idea. You know, I'm just the supportive role of trying to help make it come to fruition. But she had the idea that it's time that Black people wake up to truth. It's not even about a political thing. It's like wake up to reality. What are the values that we want in our lives? Most Black people are conservative. What do you want? And how do you get there? And how do you, you know, cut through the mesh or cut through the smoke and get to the reality? Why are you voting the way you do if that's not what you believe? You know, why are you raising your family this way? And that's not what you really believe. That's not what's conducive for growth and prosperity. So our goal is to just wake people up. You know, it's synonymous with Black people leaving the plantation, right? The Democrat plantation. But in actuality, it's not about politics specifically. It's just about being the best version of yourself and taking care of your community.
Yeah, we've had a lot of discussions about this over the last 2 years or so, I guess, since even before the Floyd situation, and about you know, I just trying to unpack everything and understand why the Black community has been so captured by the Democratic Party for the last forever, right? Despite their history of not being so great to Black people. You know, it's very bizarre to me. And most of the people that I've talked to about it say that it's more of a cultural thing than it is an actual belief thing. Like you said, that Black people are pretty conservative. That's very true. Like conservative in not necessarily politically conservative, but conservative in all the ways that you would define conservatism if Republicans and Democrats didn't exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Like if it was just conservative versus liberal,
Yeah,
Black people would vote for conservative party, you know, if it was that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of mass manipulation. You got to think of people who were, it's almost like we were talking about kids who get abused and then they live with this PTSD, abused, and they're vulnerable.
Well, it's Stockholm syndrome, right? I mean,
right.
Yeah, you're captured by your captor, basically, mentally captured.
Yeah, and I think
by
that's what kind of happened to the Black community to a certain degree. I think with slavery and all of that, man, you got a group of people who have been abused and they're vulnerable. They don't know who to trust, you know, different things like that. So when they get out of slavery, and now there's lynching and there's racism and it's generationally passed down. So although things got better, the hurt got passed down from generation to generation. While my grandmother is still alive and she went through, you know, the Jim Crow South, she's still passing that down. And we are leaps and bounds, you know, beyond that. So I think that what happened is the hurt began to be manipulated by people in power. Black people were conservatives and Republicans when politics first began.
Well, abolitionists were primarily on the conservative side, right, in the late 19th century. So
100%. And the first Republicans were Black. Yeah. I mean, no, the first Black politicians were Republicans. Yeah. And so, you know, over time, they've been able to master manipulate, right? I mean, they made it go water sound like a racist, and they pushed the tide in a different direction, and they used Martin Luther King and all of these different things that they stroked the emotions of Black people and gave welfare, and, you know, and they became the, like you said, kind of like a Stockholm syndrome, but Black people didn't know, because they felt like you guys are going to save us, but they didn't know that you guys are the one that's put us in this position in the first place. Yeah. And you keep putting us in a position that you have to be the savior of. You know, you talk about the 94 crime bill. That was Democrats that forced that. You're talking about Jim Crow laws. Republicans unanimously voted against Jim Crow laws, and Democrats didn't. So, you know, Democrats wanted Black people to be in Jim Crow South, but yet they push it as if we want to rescue you from that. They want to put y'all back in chains. No, it's the Democrats that had y'all in chains. So it's this mass manipulation through media, through you know, and when people are so stupid, and then you have a generation of Black people who are stupid that become prominent, they influence the culture to be even stupider. Because if you look at somebody like LeBron James, I mean, people love him. They listen to what he say.
Well, we don't have to listen until next year now, because he just got his ass bounced out of the playoffs. So
yeah. Yeah, you know he ain't gonna say nothing in the
No,
offseason.
he's in playoff mode now, right? On Instagram, isn't that what he says? He's in playoff mode. Maybe he'll stay until the end of the finals at least.
But he has influence. He has a great reputation. He's an incredible, inspiring person in his sports life. And then when he says something, people listen. Just like Colin Kaepernick was. Colin Kaepernick is a black quarterback and all this other stuff. And he had the ears of people. But when your people who are prominent, who are successful, are dumb, you just perpetuate dumb people and dumb information out there to the public.
Yeah, I
think the tide is changing though, with people like me and Candace and a whole bunch of other people that are standing up. Herschel Walker is running for Senate, and
Royce
Georgia.
White. I'm not sure. Are you familiar with Royce White?
Somebody just sent me a text that Royce is running against Ilhan Omar.
Yes, yeah, he's a former NBA player. I think he still plays in Big Three here and there. I don't know if he's doing it this year because he's running for office, but he's he's as close to being black-pilled as anybody I've ever seen run for office. I mean, I really feel like he's got a good head on his shoulders, and for him, it's about, and I think this goes to your point. We've relied far too long, not just the black community or even America, just humanity in general, on figureheads to tell us what to think. You know what I mean? Like we don't have the time to have conversations with people and do research and figure out stuff. So it's imperative that there are guiding principles in life. You know what I mean? That we can all agree on, like keep each other safe, whatever. Yeah. There's an obvious list that almost all human beings would agree on, and from there, have conversations. The only campaign appearances that Royce White does are town hall meetings. That's all he does. Like he shows up and has conversations with a room full of people, and it's a two-way conversation too. Like I've seen him learn things in real time, and I think that's a super important thing. That's when. And it's happening a lot. Luckily, we're in the digital age, so conservative media is kind of stepping up and providing some solutions to this. But it happened for a good period during the Trump administration, where a very large portion of the population had completely lost faith in anybody that was telling them anything. You know what I mean? They were like, "This is bullshit. What you're saying is obviously bullshit. I'm not going to listen to anything else." And that's something that I don't think, like I grew up in a black neighborhood. I know their feelings towards certain things because I just grew up in that situation. And there's an institutional distrust of anybody outside of your fucking family group or friend group. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't know that guy. Why the fuck should I listen to what they're saying? And that's why institutions like that are so important, but it's also why two-way conversations are so important. You know what I mean? Good ideas or bad ideas don't get solved by censorship. They get solved with good ideas. Like we have this idea, we have a hypothesis of what reality is, and then we run some we run some tests on that to see if it's real, and then we change our hypothesis and run some more tests. We've been doing that since Socrates, like a gajillion years ago. It's this scientific method. But we've lost it. Like the media doesn't do this shit anymore. They don't fucking ask hard questions of people in leadership positions. They try to get sound bites, or they just parrot whatever the fucking leaders are saying. Like that is not what a media is supposed to do.
Right, because they don't want good ideas. That's not the point. They don't want us to change. They want their narrative to be pushed. So they don't want things to get better, because then they become irrelevant. Yeah. When people start being able to function on their own, they realize the least they need the government, and the government can't have that. They need you to think that the politicians are the only people in control. No, these fools work for us. We put them in position to represent us. They don't run us. They don't bully us. They represent what we want, their constituents. Yeah.
It's so weird when people like, first of all, I think being a fan of a politician is like being a fan of a referee. That's weird to me, that anybody would be a fan of a fucking politician, whether it's Trump or anybody else. I don't care about that shit. But it's when politicians do or say dumb shit and people are like, man, can you believe they said that? Like, yeah, it's just a person. They're just a person. They're not like a fucking, we're not exactly recruiting our best and brightest to go run for office, here, are we?
No.
I mean, come on, man.
Most of the, I think the best and brightest, and I'm not saying there aren't people in politics that are extremely intelligent and some of the best, but most of the time, the best and brightest are out here working and building and growing stuff, and they're influencing the world in other ways. They're not sitting there being one vote. But it's necessary that we have people in power that are intelligent. But we need to get the record straight. Like these politicians don't run us. The president of the United States is the commander in chief, but we elect him to be there, and we can remove him according to our system. If he's not doing what he's supposed to do, he do something criminal, we can not vote for him again, or we can get him impeached. And the people who represent us represent our voice in impeachment. Nowadays, it's like, no, I put you in office. You're a Democrat. These are Democrats. We all roll together. No matter what the people say. Yeah, they'll vote for Ketanji Brown because she's a black woman, and the people that's in the district that you are in, they say, no, I don't want that woman. But it don't matter, because now I'm in a position of power. You can't tell me what to do. I'm just going to write the legislation I can. I got 2 years to do it, or 6 years to do it. And what are you going to do about it? Not vote for me again? You know, and you know, that's kind of what it comes down to. But I'm hoping that with Trump opening the eyes of people and making you realize that all of these politicians many of them are frauds. Yeah. Many of these presidents are just shells. Brother, how does Trump, who's never been a politician, get in and do just about everything he said he was going to do? Yeah. If they weren't lying on him and pushing back on him, he would have done everything he said he was going to do in the first year. Right. You know? So it's like, well, wait a minute. Why didn't Bush do all this stuff? Oh, I know why. Well, Bush was too busy starting wars all over the place and expanding the federal government at an historic rate. And why does he do that? Because of family legacy. Yeah. Because he needs you to get the next Bush in. Yeah. That will get the next Bush in. They can't resolve anything while they're in office because they need you to vote for them in the next term. Yeah. If Obama does everything he's supposed to do in his first term, then why would you vote for him in the second term? To be honest, I mean, he's done everything. A person with new ideas will emerge. Yeah. But what they do is they breadcrumb you, because they're like, oh, I got so much to do, and there's so much more to do, and I'm going to do all these things if you elect me again. And then they elect him again, and then what? Clinton is an extension of Obama, and then Biden is an extension of Clinton. And before you know it, they have set up 100, 200 years of power. And until Trump came, and he made everybody realize that, oh, wait a minute, all these people are fraudulent. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's a pretty powerful thing to not give a shit what anybody else thinks about you, to be honest. I mean, it is. We tell people that in their personal life, just be yourself, and don't, if you're doing something because everybody else is doing it, you're probably doing shit for the wrong reasons, but that's what we expect out of politicians. And when I say we, I mean most people expect, like, people are pissed off that a couple of Republicans are going to vote for Ketanji Brown Jackson. I'm not thrilled about, I'm not a Republican. I don't give a fuck about Republicans and Democrats, but I'm not thrilled that people who consider themselves conservatives are going to vote for this person that's very lenient on pedophiles. I don't like that. And I also don't like that they're, instead of using it, everybody does it as an excuse. That should be an indictment of the entire criminal justice system, not an excuse for this woman. That makes me angry. That people aren't, I guess from my perspective, it's that people aren't just being decent human beings that are responsible to their communities. But the vast majority of people, like when, let's take Democrats and Joe Manchin, for example. They expect him, because there's a D at the end of his name, to vote for whatever Biden puts up. And he said no, and he has been demonized by the left for that. And it happens in both directions as well. We just expect people to toe the line. Like, we elected you as a Democrat, so do Democrat shit. What the fuck does that mean? You know what I mean? Right. And you know, I think you have to do the will of the people, right? I mean, if you are a Democrat and your district and the people that put you in place is saying, hey, we want you to vote this way. It doesn't matter what you think. You should vote the way that the people are telling you to vote. I mean, you do have some discretion there, because not everybody voted for you, you know, when you get elected. But you need to look at, okay, what are my people saying and what's best for our country based on the reasons why you put me in this position. But like you said, I think these people, they don't care nothing about you. They up in the Senate and Congress, and they don't care about you. These people, they are on their high horse. Their chest is high. I'm going to go up there and change the world. And I forgot every reason why you told me to be there. Your interests aren't my interests anymore. And it's hard to get them out because people aren't active. People don't vote. You know, most people complain they don't even vote. You know, even what's that fool name? The sorry quarterback, Colin Kaepernick. He even admitted he don't vote. What are you doing, brother? You don't even vote locally, federally. What are you even talking about? What's the point of you talking if you're not actively trying to make a difference? So these people are, you know, Ketanji Brown, they messed up when they said we're going to put up a black woman. Yeah. And she has to be black. So we're going to discriminate against every other race. There could be an Indian woman that's the best. There could be an Asian woman that's the best. A white woman a Native woman. There could be so many women that could be qualified, but you say you have to be black.
Yeah.
That's like saying you have to be white. That in and of itself, nobody should vote for her. I mean, well, I know there's nuance to it, but I would say I'm not involving myself in something like this because you guys started with the wrong spirit. I don't even know if she's the best qualified. You're just putting a woman here because she's black.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing with our country and how stupid half of the people are is that, oh, this is a great opportunity for a black woman to be selected. Obama picked 2 women that weren't black when he was in office. His 4 year, I mean, his 2 terms, he picked 2 Supreme Court justices. They were women, and neither one of them were black. So if it was such a big deal, the first black president should have picked a black woman.
Yeah.
And he could have picked both of them. Could have been black women. I mean, we would have had 3 black people in the Supreme Court.
The last guy I nominated was Merrick Garland, who is definitely not black and definitely not a woman. As a matter of fact, he's the attorney general now, and he's super white and also a man. Yeah, it's weird. That whole thing is weird. People that want power very rarely deserve it. And those who deserve it very rarely want it, and that's a problem, right? I mean, it's a problem with leadership in general, and it's spanned all of human history. A lot of the best leaders are called to action rather than, seek it out in that way. Yeah. And the problem now is there's so much profit motive. Like Stacey Abrams went from a net worth of $180,000 a year and a half ago when she lost her election to now $3.2 million, right? Yeah. Why?
Yeah.
Like, how is that even fucking possible?
I know how it's possible.
Yeah,
I've been around the block a few times, and I can see how I just have integrity. But I can see how people are like, oh man, I'm popular, or whatever. I can run for office, and it's a come up for me.
Yeah,
we had one of these fake politicians in California sue my wife not too long ago, Major Williams, and this guy is literally the epitome of running for office to create a lifestyle. This fool made no money. He runs for office, and now making a lot of money. He has no chance of winning, but he get to use the campaign money to fund his lifestyle,
right? Because
they can pay themselves to campaign, and then every year the dudes is campaigning, have no chance of winning, and sued my wife for defamation because she called him out on it. Of course, he lost, and now he owes us $10,000 for our lawyer fees. But these people are like, listen, I've learned this, man. Like, I was just a cop. Working for nonprofits now and listening to politicians and seeing how they work, I see how churches are fraudulent now, and I see how politicians are fraudulent, like many of them, because it's just a come up, man. I see churches operating just like I see nonprofits, and that should not be the same. Nonprofits, they have to raise money, and I go to churches now and I say, you're doing a fundraiser. This is what you're fundraising. You're tithes and offering. That's just some words that you say. Yeah. You are fundraising. You have a pastor come. You have to pay him because I get paid to speak. So you say, well, how much are you paying this pastor to come? And now he's coming to fundraise for his own money. You guys you create this facility and you come you pay 10% of your income, and the pastor's having private jets. You're like, this is just a pass-through. This is what Susan G. Komen does. They have these organizations where they only use 2% of the income that they make or the donations that they get for the actual cause.
Well, that's all. That's all that's required by law federally. Right, only 2%. Yeah, that's wild, isn't it?
What are we donating to? You say you're going to have breast cancer. Like, all of this is going to the CEO and advertising to raise more money to go to the CEO and advertising. Like, we supposed to be doing this for breast cancer.
I mean, like BLM it's now 3 times they've been popped in the last year, right? So the first one was that lady that was buying properties up in Canada, I think in Toronto or some shit. The second one,
one of the co-founders.
Yeah, one of the co-founders. Yeah, the second one was the $60 million that's evaporated, right, that they raised. Right. And then now we hear this week that they're buying properties in Southern California, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of like I don't know which, I got to do my research on which is true, but Patrisse Cullors had over $1 million portfolio that she had personally. But now I think they discovered that Patrisse Cullors, who she resigned the last year, that she had used BLM money to buy $6 million of mansions and property in a portfolio on BLM money. The first one was her money. And then now it's $6 million of BLM money. And they don't know where the $60 million is at, because I guarantee you they're not reporting it properly because they're using it for other stuff. And they give no money to George Floyd's family. They gave no money to Michael Brown's family. His family is trying to sue BLM. Breonna Taylor's family, all of these people that have died, Eric Garner, they have given no money. They could at least give money to the GoFundMe. They've given no money.
Yeah, it's
what
wild,
are they
right?
actually doing?
I have no idea. And since we're talking about it, let's get into this because over the past couple of years, the relationship between citizens and police has deteriorated quite a bit. A lot of it is based on this propaganda that's come from the left about cops, regardless of race, are racist. Like you could be a black cop that hates black people, apparently, I guess, and they're out there looking for black people to murder. And it turns out there's like 8 black dudes a year or so unarmed black dudes get shot by police, and usually it's in some kind of like mental health situation. It's not just some dude standing there like, oh, black dude, boom. That's not really how it works, right? So they push this absolute nonsense in the media that it was dangerous. And to be honest, because of the largely sealed off communities that we discussed before in the black community, a lot of that stuff bounced around and became institutional knowledge, even though it's not true. Right. Yeah. So like it's the same thing with dogs, right? Because of your grandparents, how dogs were perceived by black people back then when they were kids or maybe young adults, and how they were used by the fucking state to attack black people and stuff like that. People think this is like some kind of weird trope. It's not. Like there are large swaths of the black community that are literally afraid of dogs because of that, because they've been taught their entire lives that dogs are dangerous.
Yeah.
That's how powerful that is. Like you can look at a little terrier and be like, fuck that. You know what I mean? You could stomp that dog out anytime you wanted to, but it's like so deeply rooted. And that's the power of propaganda. And it's what we've been dealing with for the last 2 or 3 years, maybe even longer than that.
Yeah, it's like we've been boiling in the water, and now we feel it now. We're like, oh, it's just too hot up in here. Yeah. But they've been boiling us for a long time. They've been pushing propaganda for a long time. Rodney King was propaganda, in my opinion. They used him as propaganda. A lot of things that Martin Luther King stood for, they used it as propaganda. And they continue to push this narrative that's not even true, that's not necessarily true.
The data shows that it's not fucking true. It's not like I've got a different opinion than somebody else or whatever. And maybe if like you experienced it personally, then obviously it's going to stand out more to you. But the data does not match what these motherfuckers have said. It's just not true.
In no way. There's no data that matches that black people are disproportionately targeted by police. There's no data that matches that black people are unjustifiably being shot and targeted for no reason. These unarmed black people, I think they average about 12 to 14 a year unarmed. But you got to think it's 40 million black people in the country. That's the very small population of black people. And black people commit a disproportionate amount of crimes. Half of all the murders that occur in this country are perpetuated by black people in this country. And over half of all of the murder victims are black. So, black people have an influx in disproportionality in committing crimes, although Washington Post came out with an article on it that it's not a disproportionate police interaction. When you look at disproportionality of crime committed by black people, it's actually police are less likely to target them based on their criminal behavior than white people. You look at it, white people get shot unarmed twice as much as black people do every year. Twice as many white people get shot by police in general. And people say, well, it's more white people. Well, no, you can't look at that as the population, because cops don't deal with the entire population. They only deal with the criminal element. And so if you take in the criminal element, you say disproportionately, black people are committing more crimes, and the police response is not the same. So, it's not that simple. And all of the black people I've seen got killed, first of all, could have been 100% avoided if they wouldn't have done what they did. And then the other percentages, it was justified. Right. Eric Garner, Michael Brown. All these situations where if you just don't resist arrest, brother, you don't end up even what's his name? George Floyd. George Floyd, of course, Chauvin, I think, was a dirtbag, but George Floyd, Derek Chauvin was a dirtbag. I call Michael Floyd. George Floyd.
Yeah, he was a dirtbag too.
Derek Chauvin. I think get their names mixed up.
Yeah.
But so both of them were dirtbags. In my book, I wrote that the tale of two dummies or something I said, because they're both stupid. When they both meet, then you have calamity, know. But George Floyd had no business trying to box up with fake money. He ingested a lethal amount of fentanyl and methamphetamine. He resisted arrest, kicked himself out of the car, ended up on the ground, refused to get up off the ground. And then Chauvin had enough of him and decided to kneel until he died. So, but it's all could be avoided. Just don't buy stuff with fake money. And if you do, when the cops get there, just comply to what they're saying and deal with it later. You'll be alive. Michael Brown will be alive. Eric Gardner will be alive. I mean, I can go down a list, even the unjustified ones. Like it's an unjustified one. I did a video on. I can't think of his name now. It'll come back to me. He was shot 12 times and died before he hit the ground, and he didn't readily present himself as a deadly threat. I forget. I can't think of his name, but he, even in his death, even though it was unjustified, he shouldn't have been on PCP running around with a knife in his hand. Threatening people and getting the cops all riled up. And he would have never been in that position. So it's avoidable. A black man don't have to be afraid of the police. I haven't even been pulled over I'm in Arizona. Ain't nothing but white people out here and Mexicans.
Yeah.
Black people make up 5% of the population. So if there's racism to be had, when you see a black man driving a nice car, I should be pulled over 100 times. I haven't been pulled over since 2016. And before that, it was 2010. And, I cannot confirm or deny if I go over the speed limit every time I drive. So
I commit crimes on a daily basis. I'm not going to stop. I think a lot of conservatives are also kind of rethinking how they feel about police over the last 2 years now, because a lot of police officers, not just here in America, Canada, Australia, but predominantly Chicago and New York, and to some degree in Los Angeles, but luckily Sheriff Villanueva out there is a badass, and they told him to fuck off, all that stuff. But I mean, these cops pulling children out of restaurants because they're not fucking vaccinated and shit like that over the past couple of years, like that, when police officers become a tool of the state to control, like the cop is not meant to keep the state secure. It's to keep the community secure, right? The military keeps the state secure, and you cannot mix the two. So when police officers are violently enforcing regulation, not law, but regulation on behalf of the state, I think people lose a lot of faith in them. And I think rightly so, to be honest. I mean, like the way the police conduct it, there's 275 million interactions between police and citizens every single year. And the vast majority of them are benign. And when I say vast majority, I mean like 99.797%, something like that, are end without any kind of incident. But when police officers are doing that shit, then that's where I draw the line. I am no longer backing that blue, like that individual person, because you got to make a choice. Like in the military, we had a choice to say no if an order is unlawful, right? Now, what does that mean necessarily is a conversation to be had, but dragging kids out of fucking places because they don't have a vaccine passport, that seems a little unlawful to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I'll push back just a little bit on this concept, because I agree with you 1,000% that if cops are acting on behalf of the state, to perpetuate mandates that are unjustified, unconstitutional, I think that they should. That's not right. That's not what you sign up to do. But I do think that they pushed a little propaganda to get us to hate our own police, because, I remember the scenario in New York City where they had this headline that says cops arrest 8-year-old boy or something in the pizza parlor, right? It was, and so I said, that's too juicy. And my whole concept, if it sounds too juicy, then I need to do more research. Yeah. I went and looked it up, and I talked to some police officers there, and there's a conflation of police interaction, right? And they show these little clips, and they go, look at the police are throwing this kid out of here, and look at what they're doing. When you go look at the totality of circumstances, you say, well, that's not what happened. The police had no association with the kid. He just so happened to be standing in front of them and walking past them. The problem was, these businesses have rights, and they have the authority to say, we don't have to serve you if you are doing X, Y, Z. Police are not involved in reasoning. They're involved in trespassing. And so they kind of get caught in the middle of this, because that pizza parlor says you have to be vaccinated or show proof of vaccination before you come in here. They have a right to do that as an institution. as a private business. And people have a right to say, I'm not going to do it, and I'm just going to go in here anyway. And then and then it's against the law, and you can get arrested.
Right.
But what they do is they conflate that with police. Police aren't there to enforce mask mandates. They're not there to enforce vaccines. They're there because the business said you need to leave, and you're refusing to leave. And so cops have to show up and say, it is the law. They have a right to ask you to leave for whatever reason that they're saying. That's outside of discrimination and other things like that. If you got a problem with the way this business is operating, you can sue them or whatever the case may be. But you have to leave because they asked you to leave, and we're impartially enforcing the law. Now, if you see a cop, for instance, a cop can't arrest you for not wearing a mask. No cop in America can do that because it's not a law. They can't arrest you for not having a vaccine passport or whatever because it's not a law. If they take you before the magistrate and they say, I arrested this person for not having a vaccine and being in a public area, the judge is going to look and say, that's not a law that's on a book. It's dismissed. You can only enforce laws that are on the book. And I just think it gets conflated to a certain degree because they point the cops out as the ones doing it. I made another video, and I'll shut up about this. I made another video. There was these people that went into a museum, and they go, and you see a little girl in handcuffs. Or, she wasn't in handcuffs. She was actually getting escorted to the police car. And they go, they arrested a girl for not having a vaccine in a museum. That's wrong. They should have had that 9-year-old. And they talking trash. They throwing stuff at the cops. They doing all this stuff. Come to find out, it had nothing to do with the vaccine or mask because they went into the museum and the people in the museum had a policy, but they didn't enforce it. They said, we're not going to argue with you guys. So they protested in the museum till it closed. And after it closed, they refused to leave. And so the police showed up and said, it was an hour after closing. And the police showed up and said, look, you can't be here. It has nothing to do with mask mandates. So they arrested the adults, and you can't take adults and children together. So they arrested the adults. They put the young girl in the back of the police car because you can't put her in the front, and they didn't have handcuffs on her.
Right.
So escort her to the substation to be with her parents once they booked them and released them. That's all they did. But they put this idea out there that cops are doing this. Now, in other countries, I can't vouch for them at all because I think they are acting on behalf of the state. But in the United States of America, more than likely, it's that cops are now being leveraged in the middle of something.
But that comes with the territory, right? You sign up for that job and you take on a moral responsibility to your community, not to your state. And I think whether it's a matter of it becoming trespassing, which is technically that is correct. I'm not going to disagree with you there. But at some point, like police leadership, the unions or captains or somebody needs to go to the press and say, hey, this is wrong. Forcing people out of businesses because they don't obey your fucking stupid rules is wrong. That is a moral imperative for people that signed up to do this job. And when they're not doing it, that's a failure to me. It's not about the physical act of removing somebody from trespassing. It's that you being a moral authority and a middle ground between the state and the community and refusing to do anything about it. And there's a couple of sheriffs nationwide and quite a few actually of former police officers that spoke up quite a bit about it, but nobody in actual positions of authority did a goddamn thing.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that, you got to think too, sheriffs and municipal police are two different things.
Oh, big time, yeah. You can't fire a sheriff.
You can't fire him. He's elected. So, he can say whatever he want to say. The municipal police are literally under the sack of the city council. You say anything, they fire you. And they put a person there that's going to say what they want them to say. But that doesn't excuse the fact that I think that when you have an opportunity in a press conference, you can say that we are enforcing trespassing, but we're not going to waste our time with your issues on whether or not a person is wearing a mask in a hypocritical manner. Like if they sit down, it's fine, but if they stand up, it's not. But I do think that we have to be careful too of picking a side. Because police are supposed to be impartial to a certain degree, right? They're impartial. They enforce the law. There are people that want vaccination mandates, that vote for them, that want them, that believe that this is going to, this is what's right. and the problem is that we don't. I think it's all bullcrap. But we have a section of our population that don't think it's bullcrap. We have a section of our population that think it's pointless to wear a mask. If I fart and you can smell it, you're getting COVID. You know what I'm saying? So, But we have a population of people that are listening to the science, and you have all these scientists that are coming out and saying, this is a state of emergency. You have mayors who are acquiescing to the government and scientists who are saying, we can't even trust our government. These scientists are saying that you're supposed to wear a mask. We should be able to trust the government to give insight and the mayors and governors to enforce something that's a national or that's a state of emergency. We should be able to trust them. The difference in this situation is that we know it's bullcrap and we can't trust them to make the decision because they're completely lying. Then you have the other side of it to say that, no, they are telling the truth and this is right. This is what we should do as society. I tell a person if this is Ebola and Ebola was, Ebola is deadly.
16% death rate. That it's quite a bit different than fucking COVID, which is.
But you get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying. Like if this was Ebola, and
like you need that infrastructure to exist in the case of real danger, right? Yeah, for sure, I agree with that. But
but they abused it this time, I think. And some people don't think they abused it.
Oh no, they did. This is the biggest case of crying wolf in the history of human beings, in my opinion. And there's going to be like dire consequences at some point because when something is an actual emergency, nobody's going to fucking listen at this point.
Yeah, because this wasn't what it was. You get what I'm saying? And I think that's where the conflict comes with police because the state is saying, and this is what we voted for them, we gave them rights to have the power to enforce state of emergencies. And the state is saying, we have to vaccinate. We have to have vaccinate evidence. You have to have masks. And they're enforcing this. And then the cops are in the middle saying, what do I do if this, because some of these cops may actually believe that it's real. Sure. And some of them think it's bullcrap.
Well, I mean, if in my estimation, if a cop believes that they have the right to force vaccinate people or restrict their movement, then I think that cop needs to fucking find a new line of work. Frankly, that's completely undemocratic, and it's not. We do liberty here. That's what America does.
Yeah, and you should fire. They should go to. This is how it should work. The person should go to jail who imposed the law that's unconstitutional. Yeah. And then everybody that upheld the unconstitutional law, whatever you want to call it. I'm not saying something that's founded in the court. I'm talking about already established law. Violating somebody's Fourth Amendment rights and different things like that. That's already in as a law. Right. You cannot do that. I'm not talking about something that they have to go to court and deliberate. Yeah. In the future, we'll find. You do that, you have to pay a consequence. When I was a cop, we swore to uphold the Constitution.
Against who though? All enemies, foreign and domestic, right? And that's my problem with this line of reasoning that, I understand that cops are stuck in a tough position, but it's a tough job and you signed up for it. A rule or regulation or law or whatever it is only exists if there are people there to enforce it, right? And when people who are reasonable people who are in those positions of enforcement say no, and they should have said no, then it all goes away. Like if the airline's writing this open letter to Biden telling him to knock it off with the mask shit, that'll be the end of it. On the 19th or 18th or whatever, that'll be the end of it. We'll never see masks on planes again, probably, because capitalism wins ultimately, usually in these situations. But this, I expected a lot more. Maybe it was because cops are so demoralized after getting shit on for so long. That's a possibility. And some people just want to keep their jobs. I get that too, I guess, to some degree, but I would not do something that I found morally reprehensible to keep my job ever.
Yeah, it just depends. I agree with you. And it just really depends. I thought that arresting people for marijuana possession was ridiculous, but it's not my job to have my emotions involved in it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have to say, according to the law, this is the law. Did you violate the law or not? If I have discretion, I can use discretion, but if I don't, I have to enforce the law. I felt like that marijuana, I feel like it's not as big of a deal as some of these other drugs that are out there. We should have been using our resources other places, but it's not my job to be political when it's come to enforcing the law. When you have domestic violence and you go, I think both of y'all should go to jail. Yeah. But technically, you did not break the law. She did. So now she got to go to jail. Yeah. But in my mind, I'm like, I want to whoop your and take both of y'all to jail. Yeah. People that beat up kids and do stuff to children. It's like, no, I want to take you out back and give you some justice. But I have to be impartial and say, okay, what is the law? I'm only enforcing what's on the books. Anything outside of the books is not my demand. Hopefully, as a private citizen, I can vote to get some of these things changed. I can pursue telling the mayor, the governor, to some degree in my personal life. But as a police officer, I have to be impartial, whether I agree with these things or not. The only thing is that if it's a constitutional violation, you don't have a choice in that either. You can't violate people's constitutional rights. And if you do, you're held accountable, you know.
Well, I mean, we just did violate people's constitutional rights as a matter of institution for the last 2 years, though, right? Like,
kind of, sort of. I don't think it's
demanding to see somebody's, like, to get somebody's medical information to allow them entry into a place or to travel. That is a clear violation of search and seizure. There's no question about that.
Well, no, technically. Well, see, this is where they have to deliberate in court, and then they have to make a judgment on it, because according to information that I read, and I did a live stream on it, which I couldn't deny it, that when it comes to institutions asking for medical, whether or not you've been vaccinated, in an emergency, state of emergency, it's legal to do that. And outside of a state of emergency, it's not legal to do that. And so it's not a HIPAA violation either.
No, it's not. It's never been a HIPAA violation. That's
right. Some people said that,
No.
but also in a state of an emergency, according to the law, they can implement things like that in a state of emergency. Outside of a state of emergency, they cannot do it. So they were able to get away with it technically, according to the law, because they declared a state of emergency. Now, after all of this is evaluated and we go to the higher courts and determine that it is in fact a violation of constitutional rights, even in a state of emergency, then I think that we would have some ground there. Unfortunately, it's not established law. It's not established as a violation. I just feel like it's a violation. I mean, you feel like it's a violation. Most people feel like you can't make me, because what happens is they play it in a circle. Them asking you to take it at the restaurant isn't just that. It's that you may be coerced to get vaccinated to come there. You know, when they ask you, you got to be vaccinated to travel. They use that as coercion to get vaccinated so you can travel to see your family. Yeah,
there are people in Canada right now that are literally stuck in Canada. They're not allowed to leave because they don't have a vaccination. They can't cross a land border because they're not vaccinated. Yeah. That seems like fucking not a good thing, right? When you restrict people's movement and stuff.
Yeah, I think that should be considered a violation. It's just that these politicians have done it under the guise of an emergency order that I think was coerced and manipulated by Fauci and all these other people. Yeah. So we need to figure out, how do we change so this will never happen again, and how do we manage it in case it's really something? You know
the first part is, I don't think that municipal police stations should exist in the first place. I think police should be leaders should be elected, and it shouldn't be politicians, right? Like, if you want a sheriff, let's have a sheriff, and they have sheriff power. But I don't see the point of having a police officer that is an expert in policing, is an expert in security and investigations and shit like that, taking orders from some knucklehead that won a popularity contest. That doesn't make any sense to me. You know what I mean? Because ultimately, what that allows is for people to weaponize police against the community, and that is completely that's not a good thing. It's really not.
I agree with you, but I would go a step further and say even sheriff's deputies can be influenced because it's an election. Like, we had a guy here, Penzone, here in Phoenix.
Yeah, I know him.
The guy to me is more political than he is as a sheriff. And if you didn't like the one before him, I forget his name, and I love him. I forget his name.
Arpaio.
Arpaio.
Yeah.
I mean, just imagine if you didn't like Arpaio and you thought Arpaio was violating people's constitutional rights or whatever. I thought Arpaio did what he's supposed to do. But if you didn't like Arpaio, that's a nightmare to you. Yeah. That he's elected for 20-something years and he's enforcing his conservative ideas, and him putting Tent City up, which I think was a great idea. But some people don't like that. So you can get caught in the middle, because if you get a liberal sheriff to come in and want LGBTQ, and you can get effed on that one as well. So it's just a battle. That's the beauty of constitutional republic, man. It's like, you got to get the best people in, and the system works. If you get crooked, corrupt people in there, the very system that is built to make us successful will be our downfall.
Yeah, for sure.
If you get a sheriff in there, that's Sheriff Lamb here in Arizona. Yeah, Mark Lamb. I love him, man. All these other, like, there's a lot of sheriffs around the country. The one you said in California,
Villanueva, good guy.
You get a good one in there, they say, no, I'm not. We're not going to arrest people for masks. We're not going to enforce that. But you get a bad one in there, we're going to allow sanctuary cities for illegals to be. You get what I'm saying? We're going to let prostitution be legal. We're not going to arrest anybody for drug dealing and because they're black. You know, like it can really get dicey. Yeah. But I do think that, to your point of municipal police, I think that there should be a separation of leadership and authority in municipal police. Police should not be under city council. No. In some states, some cities, police actually are the head of their decision making. That's rare, but in some cities that's their case. The city council is separate. The city manager and then the police chief is kind of like a sheriff. It's his own position. Yeah, I mean, it's like a CEO of a company and a president of the company. They do two different things. Right? Exactly. That's why I like having these conversations, because it seems to me like I have a lot of conversations with people from all sides of the aisle about these issues, and it seems like very few people are happy with the status quo, right? From either direction, whether it's the stupid defund bullshit, which backfired, like that was so dumb. Anyways, we've talked ad nauseum about that shit. But so you touch on a lot of that stuff in your new book, Beaten Black and Blue. Tell us about that. Yeah, so I wrote a book about things that I felt like the society wasn't getting, attention to, because a lot of police officers that are in it right now, they can't write books. They can't. It's hard for them to be political because then they get blackballed. But somebody like myself that's fresh out the police department to a certain degree, in 2017, but I could say everything that all the police officers I know want to say, and I could write in the book with no punitive repercussions. So that's what I did. I spoke about the lies and the myths of unjustified police shootings, and I speak about justified police shootings, and I talk about a myriad of different things. I interview 5 police officers to give their perspective in the book. So it's not just me. It's me plus 5 police officers from around the country who are giving their perspectives on what it's like to be a cop in today's society. A little bit of my background in the book, but my most proudest part of the book is at the very end, where we give solutions to the problems. And not only do I give solutions, all the police officers that were currently in the book or that were in the book gave solutions as well. The cop that was responsible for me becoming a cop, I interviewed him, Sean Payne, who I did a ride along with in Tucson. He was in the book as well. And that was a really great moment. At my book launch party, we both kind of teared up because he really inspired me to be a cop and led me to where I'm at today. And he's a tremendous police officer, man. He a go-getter. He's nice to people. He helped people after he arrests them. Like he's the cop's cop, man, in my opinion. Dude's a great dude. So in the book, I explain all those things, and I tell some cool stories about policing, some interesting stories of me saving people's lives. And it's very short, man. It was only 144 pages. We tried to get it out, and I think I need to make a sequel to it. Yeah, I mean, there's man, I can't remember the guy's name, Kevin something, the cop in San Francisco who stopped like 400 people from jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge or some shit. Oh, wow. Yeah, I heard I can't remember. We've had him on the show before. I can't remember his last name. Oh, wow. But of all the things that I hear from, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to the noise from the far corners of politics. Kevin Briggs, that's his name. I don't pay a whole lot of attention to that stuff, but I do listen to actual cops and actual human beings that live in communities that are policed heavily. And I think everybody's aching for a positive relationship between police and citizens again, right? Like they did this study in Oakland. 83% of people wanted the same amount or more police in their neighborhoods. And they certainly didn't want them they didn't want less of them, and they didn't want them less trained for sure, right? Because that's fucking stupid. The days of the beat cop knowing all the fucking grandmas in the neighborhood, that shit's got to come back. That community policing element's got to come back in some way. And that's where municipal police come in too, because they can be more intimate than sheriff, who has all this unincorporated area. Yeah. I mean, the sheriff department, that'll be just too much for them to do all of that. So these municipal police, like for instance, I stay in a small town here in Arizona, right outside of Scottsdale, and there ain't nothing going on over here. I'm in a very nice neighborhood, and the cops, I never see them, but then when I do see them, they know me and they come down the street. And if I call them, they're going to be here in less than a minute. So having that intimacy is good. But I do think that what we have to do is stop celebrating criminals. Like, we all need to be honest with ourselves, because they've been able to make it about race. So if a white cop is like, I want to arrest that kid, he's been terrorizing the community. It's like, well, hold on. We could talk about him being a thug, but you can't talk about him being a thug.
Right, yeah.
Because then you talking about our people, so.
Well, my people aren't white people. My people are fucking good people. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Exactly.
all this talk about diversity, the only diversity that really matters is diversity of thought, right?
Yeah.
Like, people who bring different things to the table so we can collectively find the best goddamn solutions to these problems we have. Like, we have existential problems: how to feed people, keep them warm, deal with disease, deal with lunatics. These are existential problems. And if you're a doctor, let's say this: if you're a doctor and you're prescribing people essential oils, then you're not a very good doctor. And that's essentially what all these social Marxist assholes are doing these days. It's like, oh, it must be racism. It must be this. No, it's fucking, what it is class warfare. It's patricians, like rich people against everybody else, like it has been for the entirety of human civilization. Anyways, so
100%.
I'm gonna read more of the book. I've only read the first couple chapters, but it's actually a pretty quick read if you're out there, you're looking for something to read. Well, I say read. I listen to the audiobooks. I don't read shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, go check it out. It's Beaten Black and Blue: Being a Black Cop in America Under Siege. It's on Amazon, hardcover, Kindle, and audiobook on Audible. And thanks for coming out today, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, and they can get the signed copy on my website, the Officer Tatum store. If they want the signed copy, we still have a few of those available.
What's that website again?
TheOfficerTatumStore.com.
Okay.
TheOfficerTatumStore.com. So all you got to do is look up Beacon Black and Blue. You'll find the websites. I bought the domains and stuff. So, yeah, if you want the signed copy, we have them available for you. And thank you so much for having me, man. Great conversation.
Yeah.
It's good to talk to somebody who is level-headed, and even though we may disagree on a few things, we still are pursuing the same mission. And I know for a fact, if we had to be in a room with just me and you and a bunch of people trying to kill us, I know you will have my back and we'll fight to the death, man.
Yep.
So I really appreciate you, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming. We appreciate it. Until next time.